Hi class. In this video lecture, we're going to talk a little bit about culture. Culture is an incredibly strong force within organizations. And we know about country cultures and regional cultures. Well, organizations have cultures as well, which are just kind of the unwritten norms, the way they do things. Large organizations are really a collection of a lot of different cultures. I mean, cultures go all the way down to your department, your office, your work group. All right. Now, the overall company culture is going to have an impact on it, but the culture of your work group is incredibly important. And there's an old thing, how important is strategy? Because I also teach the strategy class. Well, strategy is very important, but one of the famous quotes is that culture eats strategy for breakfast and lunch. If the culture isn't a good fit for the strategy you're trying to execute, forget about it. It's going to be really hard. So to kind of give an overview, developing a strong, effective culture with your work group can be one of the most important things that a leader does. Keep in mind, culture is a set of key values, assumptions, understandings, norms that are shared with members of the organization or the department and taught to new members as being correct. Remember, again, different parts of an organization, departments, work teams, etc., can have their own distinct cultures. They're usually influenced by the overall culture, but that's often where the culture and the rubber hits the road, is the culture of the team, the department, those different types of things. And those are the things, especially early in the mid-times of our careers, we're going to have the most impact over, and it's going to be the most important thing. Now, when we think about culture, we often think of it in three different levels, each one being a little more subtle, a little less obvious. Now, the first level is the surface level. These are things we can see. The way people dress, the patterns of behavior, the physical symbols, ceremonies that are being conducted, award ceremonies, things like that. The office layout. Are we just a virtual organization? We're all together? Are we Cubicleville? All right, those types of things. At a deeper level are the things people say. And what they say might not always be what's really going on, but it is one level of culture that we can see. These are the expressed values and beliefs. They're not observable, but we can discern them from how people explain what they do and why they do it. And then finally, the most embedded culture are deeply embedded, all right? These are where organizational members may not even be consciously aware of them. It's just what we do. We might think it's a global thing. It's a global thing to work Saturday mornings. Well, maybe it's just really our work group that's doing it, or our company that does that. That we do have different cultural norms, and sometimes we don't even realize we're doing them. For instance, here, we have an organization, we have a guy very casually dressed, we have someone very formally dressed. That gives us keys at the surface level. This is probably a much more formal organization than this one is. Same thing goes with office layout. Here's Cubicleville. Here's more of an open office layout. We can see that probably gives us an idea of different cultural norms. But again, some cultural norms can be incredibly deeply embedded. This is Ross Perot, and Ross Perot ran for president. There was a time we actually had 3 official candidates for president. This was when Bill Clinton was running against the first Bush that became president, George H. Bush, as opposed to George W. Bush, that most of you remember. And there was Ross Perot. Ross Perot was an entrepreneur. He was a billionaire. He'd started a company called EDS. I forget, it was something data services. And he sold that company out to General Motors for like $1 billion and became a billionaire, and he also ran for president. And he was kind of a flaky guy. He didn't become president. But there's a quote from him that I really like that talked about the difference in cultural values between General Motors and EDS. And he states, "I come from an environment where if you see a snake, you kill it. These guys see a snake, and by a snake they mean a problem. They get a consultant on snakes, they form a committee on snakes, they think about it for a year, and by the time they do anything, there are snakes all over the factory." Now, a lot of people at GM probably thought, well, that's the way everybody does it, isn't it? That's not us. We're just doing it. That's not our culture. They wouldn't even express that. What's your culture like here? Well, we just sit on problems for a long, long time. all right? But we can often see things that have just become so ingrained within companies. Now, culture serves two important functions. One of those is internal integration. We need people to know what's expected of them. Culture helps firms form a collective identity, all right? Members know how they're expected to work together. It also can help with external adaptation. Culture determines how the organization meets goals and deals with outsiders. Are we open and friendly towards outsiders? Are we closed? Do we look outside for innovation? Do we scoff outside? Things like that. The right cultural values help the organization respond rapidly to customer needs, to competitors, to what needs to be done. The wrong culture can be toxic, inside and or a disaster when working with the external environment. Culture is important, and it's not always good to have strong cultural norms because they can be in the wrong direction. The right cultural values can help the organization respond rapidly to customer needs and competitors, and again, the wrong ones can end up being toxic. Shaping culture. When the current culture is not effective in integrating the organization and or working with the external environment, researchers call that a culture gap. It's not where we need it to be. So sometimes you want to get a pulse of your work group. What do we see as the culture? Get them to talk about what they see. Have a meeting. What are our main cultural norms? Talk about whether those are effective. Are these what we want to work towards? The gap is the difference between the desired and the actual values and behaviors. And when we're out of sync, the leaders need to begin leading some discussions. Decide upon the cultural norms that they want the organization to have. And again, this is a shared thing. Work with your people. Talk to your people. Let the organization members know what the desired cultural norms are, what we want people to be working for. Select new members. Hiring is really important. People that will fit with the new cultural values. And train all members. All right? These are the things that we're going to work towards. We're going to work towards becoming better at these types of norms, these types of understandings. Reward people, of course, based on the desired cultural norms. The whole spectrum of awards, intrinsic, extrinsic, work on affiliation needs with awards, money needs, all those different types of things. But try to think about how we're facing that back towards the cultural values that we want to push forward. And of course, personally live the desired cultural norms. If you want people to be friendly and positive towards coworkers, you got to be incredibly important, all right? Now, leaders can use several other techniques, and the Leadership Challenge book talks about these as well, because there's a lot of commonality in the leadership literature that these are important. Leaders can use several techniques to maintain healthy cultures, provide smooth and internal integration, and help the organization adapt. Ceremonies, for instance. A ceremony is a planned activity that makes up a special event that's generally conducted for the benefit of an audience. Award ceremonies, things like that, can be really, really helpful. Stories, regularly telling stories or circulating stories of people going above and beyond in ways that are consistent with the culture that we want. Their narratives, again, based on true events, don't just make things up. All right, you can slightly embellish, but keep them credible, all right? And get people to repeat them. Share those stories. If you hear that story come back around, hey, I heard about this, go, great, it's moving around. Because those stories are kind of the cognitive thoughts of our group, and those push behaviors, those push attitudes. And then symbols. A symbol is an object, an act, or event that conveys meaning to others. And thoughtful symbols can be important. When I worked at Caterpillar, we were in our headquarters in Peoria, Illinois, and when we went into work in the morning, we walked down a long hallway that had flags from a lot of the different nations that Caterpillar operated in. The word was, you're in Peoria, Illinois, but you're a global company. And that was an important cultural norm that they wanted people to have. This is a cocktail napkin. It has Dallas, Houston and San Antonio in a triangle. Supposedly, that was the genesis of Southwest Airlines. It was Herb Kelleher and a couple of his friends were having drinks in a bar, and they talked about, what if we just had an airline that just kept going in a loop between these cities? And that's how Southwest was born. So they use that as a symbol of great ideas can come about anywhere. They can begin with small things, okay? Also specialized languages, slogans, stuff like that. They are not culture, but if you really think of this is what we want our culture to be, you know, things like just do it and stuff like that can be really, really important and helpful. Of course, selection and socialization, as we mentioned earlier, of new employees is important. Hiring. My wife, one of the things that she does at SOAS is she's one of their people that sits in on lots of interviews just to see if this person is going to fit the culture and talk through those types of things. And that can be really important and really effective, because just because somebody has the skills doesn't mean they're going to really be productive here, and that's what we want them to be. And then, of course, working to train and socialize new people when they come in. And then, of course, as a leader, the daily actions. We're looking back to that again. The leader has to go out and do the right thing, do things consistent with the culture. We want to be a culture that's thankful. Leader emphasizes who they're thankful for, why they're thankful for, and stuff like that. Super important. Okay, thank you.